their speaking skills, right? Just move that camera, now you make me self-conscious. It's a supportive group, right? No one's here to pass judgment. I had a member of our chapter, she stood up one week to do a commercial, and like many of us have probably happened before, she tripped all over herself. She couldn't get her message across no matter how hard she tried. When she sat down, we all stood up and gave her a standing ovation. And she said, in the type of atmosphere that she grew up in, the type of family, and then where she worked previously, she never had a supportive group of people that would do something like that. So it meant the world to her that even though she had tripped all over herself, that she hadn't been able to get a good commercial or her point across that week, that we didn't care. We were accepting of her. We weren't passing judgment on her. And that's one of the things that I love about me and I as well. Ray brought up, your education segment was awesome this morning. And I want to give you an example of one of those desperate measures that a member of our chapter took. And I usually don't like talking about negative things, but I'll bring it up only because we talked about it this morning. We had a great auto repair guy in our chapter. And this is a gentleman that was getting about 15 pieces of closed business a week. His average piece was worth about between $200 and $300 between oil changes and engine replacements. So it was worth, what, $3,000 a week worth of business times 50 weeks. We're talking about $150,000 a year in business from our chapter. He made one bad decision, and that was we had another member of our chapter whose daughter, he went to auction and bought a car for her. He was doing some work on the car, it wasn't quite ready. So he had a used car dealership as well, and he let her take a car, which is fine. Then he sold the car, so she had to bring it back. Long story short, he ended up giving her a customer's car to use, which is a big number. Whoa. The car was in for repair. He started, he was obviously lying to the customer, saying the car wasn't done yet. Meanwhile, this other person was driving a car all over the city. She ends up getting pinched for a DUI. The customer gets a phone call from the state police in Windsor and says, "Do you know that so-and-so was using your car?" And she's like, "Of course not. It's in for repair at Pro Car Care." Well, long story short, this is one of the other things that makes B&I unique. What do we all have and adhere to? Code of ethics. There's 6 code of ethics. He did not live up to the ethical standards of his profession. So our chapter had to. It was a little bit of negative press. We actually have the local newspaper as a member of our chapter, and I got to tell you, our member had done a bunch of great things in the community. In fact, he had just been in the newspaper about 3 or 4 weeks before for receiving a community service award from our chapter. And our editor, who was in our chapter, did a great job. I mean, the spin they put on the article made him not look so bad. But the bottom line was he couldn't be a member of our chapter anymore. We have something in our chapter called a business compass team. And that is, if you have anything in your business that you're struggling with, and it might not be a matter of being desperation. It could be business is too good, you don't know how to manage all of it. We have between 10 and 12 members of our chapter will get together very informally. We used to call it a round table, but then we kind of put an official name on it. And we'll just talk about your business and brainstorm and get some ideas together, kind of like what Ray talked about, having like a board of directors in here for your business. So we sat down with him, and his office manager says, and they danced around this topic forever. And finally, somebody asked me what I thought, and I said, look, I got to address the big white elephant in the room, and what are we going to do about what happened? I mean, people aren't going to want to continue to come to you because they've lost their trust in you. I said, and maybe it didn't happen today with the members of our chapter, but you fast forward a month, those 15 referrals a week, they're not going to be there. And she says, this really hasn't hurt our business at all. Pro Car Care is no longer in business. That is an example of one decision made out of desperation. He wanted to keep the member of our chapter happy. He wanted to do a favor for him and make sure his daughter had a car to drive. And because of that, he lost his business. So, by all means, if he had come to anyone in the chapter, if he had just gone to the member and said, look, I don't have a car for her to use, we probably would have gotten money together and rented one. Whatever the case was. But, that's just a case of one bad decision can really, really alter. And like you said, when you're desperate, you're not thinking straight. You take a deposit for a job, and suddenly you spend it on something else that you feel is more important. Or whatever the case may be. Just don't let yourself get in that position. Use the chapter as a resource. So, that's kind of what is unique about B&I. I just wanted to cover some of that with our visitors that were here. If you're of interest in this chapter or one of the other surrounding chapters, by all means, you're more than welcome to visit another meeting that has a regular agenda. And I'm sure any of the chapters would be happy to accept your application. Now, I know there's a lot of questions about how do you end up with a chapter in Connecticut with 75 plus members. For the life of me, I don't know. I'll tell you, I'll talk about, and I'm more than happy to take questions about things that we've done in our chapter. Were they unique? I don't know. They worked for us. But it started with, and I was mentioning this earlier, I sat at a table, I don't know, it was about this big around, with Jim O'Shea, Jim Pike, who is our property and casualty member, insurance broker in our chapter, and myself. And Jim says, all right, we're going to charter this chapter. Now, before I got re-involved with the chapter, they had been working, I think, for like 2 months on trying to get chartered. And so I came to the first meeting, I was expecting to see like 15, 20 people there, and there's 3 of us, and I said to Jim O'Shea, who was in another chapter, I'm like, all right, there's 3 of us here and you don't count, so that's only 2. And we're supposed to get to 20. And some of you that are in smaller chapters or that have been in this chapter for a while, you kind of know that feeling of like, how are we going to get from point A to point B? So, over time, we kind of took a break over the holidays and we came back in January. And there was a few more people in the room at that point. And we spent every meeting. And I heard, has anyone else been through the core group process? No? The core group or chapter startup. Has anyone else been through that process? Okay, so you kind of know every week. I'm not sure how it was for you guys. For me, it was this. Every week, Jim O'Shea would show up, and he would talk about what's unique about B&I and what's different, and it was a broken record. And after about 4 weeks of hearing this, you're pulling your hair out, and it's like, I just want to get this group started. So what we started to do was go around the room, and we had our classification template that we have, empty classifications, and we simply asked, who knows a CPA? And someone raised their hand and said, I know a CPA. And I can't tell you how many times that this happened. And we talk about being specific in our commercials in B&I. So the first week, we're like, okay, great, can you invite him? And she was like, yeah, I'll invite him. So next week comes, there's no CPA at our meeting. So we're like, Heather, where's that CPA? Oh, I called him, we couldn't make it this week, it's coming up on tax season, doesn't know, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't make it. Okay, we'll try to invite him next week. And next week came, Heather, where's the CPA? Oh, he was busy. Anyone ever have that experience? It's hard to get in there? Oh, yeah. Okay. We said, who is this CPA? She says, his name's Ed Minster. And 3 people in the room go, I know Ed. Be specific. So we got Ed's name. And 3 of us called.